It's late at night and you're home all alone. From the confines of your suburban living room, you stare out beyond the glass. You see a street, a house, a window, a person. You tell yourself you're just casually watching. Something just accidentally caught your eye. Moments of privacy become moments of intimacy. Though the scene you're watching is not that of your neighbour, and the glass that you're watching it through is not that of a window. In fact, you're up late watching a movie on television, and a character on the screen is staring, spying on someone's most intimate moments. Both of you are transfixed, and though it's the film's protagonist committing the transgression, you can't help but feel that you yourself are witnessing something you are not meant to, an act of voyeurism. But why do we love these scenes of people watching others, observing characters in their most private moments? And what about the watchee in these films, the ones being surveyed? The fear of your every move being seen by a shadowy watcher hiding behind the darkest windows on the street. A lot of movies incorporate these scenes, and they can make us feel as if we are the ones prying into the private lives of others. Is it because cinema itself is inherently voyeuristic and uses the language of looking that prioritizes a certain type of gaze? Or maybe there's something inside all of us that is secretly drawn to watching, drawn to looking, the allure of seeing something we know we are not meant to.
Okay, I didn't hear you.
Are you spying on the neighbors, too?
Ooh, actually, he is.
When I was a little kid growing up in the suburbs, I had a small, cheap telescope in my bedroom pointed out of the window towards the sky. I was so desperate to stay up watching television after bedtime that one day I reorientated the telescope downwards from the night sky and into a window down the street, where I could barely view an out-of-focus television screen inside a neighbour's house. What would I see, I always thought? Maybe an episode of The X-Files? A late-night erotic thriller on Channel 5? Would I see something that I was not meant to? We discussed erotic thrillers in a previous video, and I just quickly wanted to thank everyone for the lovely feedback I received. You see, YouTube can sometimes feel like a fast-paced, over-energetic environment. So over on this channel we try to slow things down a little and do things at a more deliberate pace. And it is at this pace that we will explore the idea of the cinematic voyeur. The word voyeur comes from the French term voyeur, which itself is derived from the verb voir, meaning to see. As an act of seeing or watching someone without their consent, voyeurism is illegal in most countries, where it is seen as an invasion of privacy, particularly in private environments such as bathrooms, changing rooms, and bedrooms. In many movies, characters walk a blurry line between passive or accidental looking and active watching. Where is this line between innocently seeing something and intentional voyeurism? And on what side of it do we stand as viewers of a movie? It can be hard at times for us to see through the eyes of a protagonist who's snooping on an unsuspecting individual. But as we continue to look, we egg them on, wanting to see more. Why is this? Maybe it's because it allows us to indulge without the onus of being the ones actively doing it. We're not watching, you see. We're just looking. Jean-Paul Sartre's idea of the gaze implies that as individuals, we initially experience the world from a subjective, self-centered perspective, with other people being perceived as subjects and the center of their own experience. This is kind of similar to playing a huge MMO like World of Warcraft, for example. Though, upon the realization that we are being directly watched within the gaze of someone else, we become merely an object in that person's world. So now we're like no longer a player-controlled character, but instead we've become an NPC in a single-player game like Skyrim or GTA. This realization of being observed without consent represents a loss of freedom, control, and most importantly, power, something we'll explore a little bit later. We are in the eyes of others, and it is from the gaze of others that we assume as ourselves. In John Berger's 1972 seminal documentary series and subsequent book, Ways of Seeing, Berger argued that men act and women appear, men look at women and women watch themselves being looked at. Female viewers of both art and cinema thus become conditioned to seeing through this male perspective. It wasn't until 1975 that British filmmaker and theorist Lara Mulvey coined the term for this dynamic, calling it the male gaze. In a world ordered by sexual imbalance, pleasure in looking has been split between active male and passive female. Now, I'm not going to explain the male gaze to you because I'm sure you're already knowledgeable and semi-familiar with this, but as we'll see in a moment, some later films offer a very different take on these very specific gender dynamics.
Oh dear. We become a race of peeping toms. What people ought to do is get outside their own house and look in for a change. Yes, sir.
When you're confined to a wheelchair within a small single room of a Manhattan apartment during one of the hottest summers New York has ever seen, the outside world can make for some fascinating viewing. Alfred Hitchcock's 1954 mystery thriller, Rear Window, lingers in the moment of seeing something you're not meant to, which in this case, our photographer protagonist Jeffries is witness to what he believes to be a murder. The dual feelings of being both empowered, as Jeffries is in control of not just his view, but our view, as we see nearly everything from his perspective in the film, and of the feeling of being powerless, without many of his usual physical functions, as he's wheelchair bound. Rear Window really embraces this idea of 20th century urban living, just as many Americans were escaping to the newly constructed post-war suburbs. There was a curiosity to the burbs at this moment in time, many of which were just being built out of reach of the city. The reality of living downtown was becoming less and less desirable to a generation of those returning home from the Second World War. Big out-of-town developments where land was cheap and you could comfortably afford a nice three-bedder with a garage, and where instead of a balcony, one could have an entire garden. The irony is that living downtown these days, especially in an area like Greenwich Village, which is where Rear Window is set, is financially out of reach for most regular people, especially a jobbing photographer like Jeffries. Now, I've always loved the set of Rear Window, which was constructed in its entirety on a soundstage in California. The bar/restaurant just beyond the alley comes alive at night and hints at a world beyond the immediate confines of the Courtyard. Jeff Desham's 2011 video piece, Rear Window Time-Lapse, is an assemblage of various shots from throughout the film, composited together to create a time-lapse view of the entire Courtyard and its inhabitants. The New York City of Rear Window is hot, providing us with an explanation as to why everyone has their windows open. New York is great as, depending on the weather, we get two very different urban presentations. We have the summer New York, as seen in movies like Rear Window and Do the Right Thing, Summer of Sam, Smoke, and my personal favourite, Die Hard with a Vengeance. But by winter the city transforms and we get a distinctly different feeling, seen in such films like Ghostbusters 2, Inside Llewyn Davis, parts of New Jack City, and in one of the city's most transformative representations, Home Alone 2, where much of Manhattan feels like a dark, menacing, haunted old town. Rear Window itself has been copied, parodied and pastiched many times over the decades. From a direct-to-TV remake in the 90s starring Christopher Reeve, a great episode of The Simpsons, to Disturbia, a soft reimagining which updates the setting to the mid-2000s and moves the action out of downtown and into the burbs. Just 2 days after Rear Window's August 1954 New York cinema release, Pushover, a movie with very similar themes of surveillance, voyeurism and murder, also debuted on the big screen. A huge coincidence. Maybe there was something in the water that summer. I've always been fascinated with this idea of seeing something you're not meant to. Maybe not something as gruesome as a murder, like in Jeffries' case, but something that holds a sentiment of mystique, the spark of mystery. Hitchcock is a master of this idea, and we see it time and time again in these films. You see, with voyeurism it's not so much about witnessing the actual act of intimacy, illicitness or eroticism itself, but it's about the anticipation that surrounds the act of viewing, the what if. So much of the time a voyeur invests is propelled by anticipation, and you're hoping they're going to do something that will make your time feel worthwhile. As we move into the 60s, we see the concept of voyeurism entwine itself more tightly with themes of danger and death. 1960s Peeping Tom, a British movie directed by Michael Powell, follows Mark, a seemingly mild-mannered, well-to-do gent who works in the movie industry by day but moonlights as a secretive killer by night. Much like Rear Window, we're again deep in the city, but this time we are in London, opening with a great simulacra of a nighttime Rathbone Street. Whereas Rear Window and Pushover both led from benevolent perspectives of their protagonists, Peeping Tom inverts this and places us firmly behind the eyes of a malevolent force, a killer. A deeply uncomfortable viewpoint for us as viewers, as we're now inherently roped into the voyeuristic gaze of the killer, becoming almost complicit ourselves. The term scopophilia, which means to take sexual pleasure from looking at a person or at an object in absence of partaking in the real thing, is explicitly used in this film by a psychiatrist when analysing the crimes of the killer.
It has something to do with what causes people to be peeping toms.
Scoptophilia, that would interest him. Most fertile mind.
Scoptophilia, the
Morbid urge to gaze.
This direct Freudian dissection of the perpetrator opens all sorts of psychosexual avenues in which the film repeatedly travels down. Themes of trauma, obsession and repression are plentiful, but what I find uniquely compelling for a film of its time is its interrogation of issues surrounding surveillance, images and the act of knowing you're being watched, with Mark holding up a mirror to his victims as he records their deaths for him to watch over and over, and for them to see themselves being watched in their final moments. Watching you, watching me.
Now what you doing?
Photographing you, photographing me.
The 60s saw other films that dealt with voyeurism, with 1966 Blow Up following another photographer in London, though this one thinks he might have accidentally taken a photograph of something he shouldn't, and 1968's Targets, which features dual stories, one of an aging Hollywood horror icon and another of a seemingly aimless spree killer who watches not from binoculars or from a camera, but from the scope of a gun. Targets signals the end of the golden age of Hollywood and a move away from the fantastical ghouls, ghosts and goblins of yesteryear and into the more contemporary world of the serial killer. By the 1970s, we were firmly looking down the barrel of a gun more and more often. The sexual aura underpinning voyeurism had become mixed with something more sinister, death. Yet it was one that we couldn't pull our eyes away from.
Sector 71. We're in position to start our surveillance.
It's 1971, and perched high above the streets of San Francisco, atop a 52-story skyscraper, sits Scorpio. He's watching an unsuspecting victim across the city in a smaller, though no less impressive 30-story skyscraper, a brutalist Hilton hotel complete with a now-closed rooftop pool. 55 California Street, the Hilton, and the nearby Transamerica Pyramid all completed construction within 3 years of each other, drastically reshaping San Francisco's skyline. Scorpio, our antagonist in Dirty Harry, embodies the very forefront of this change. You see, in the early 70s, not only was the physical makeup of the city changing, but the lifeblood that pumped through its streets was quickly transforming, and not for the better. Early 1970s homicide rates were increasing at an alarming rate, and violent crime was through the roof. How could somewhere with so much new cash flowing in, and all these new buildings, be simultaneously experiencing such a surge in criminality? Scorpio here then, in Dirty Harry, symbolises post-modern American urban decay, an inherently contradicting reality where wealth and degeneracy exist side by side, and in this film's case, existing directly on top of one another, as the countercultural Scorpio sits atop the corporate Bank of America skyscraper. How much of the money trickling down from these new monolithic structures and organisations is actually being used to tackle crime and fund civic services meant to curtail it? We share the view of Scorpio's single-barrel crosshair as he watches a young woman swim, switching from his point of view to a reverse shot of the rifle, staring right down the barrel. This viewpoint is repeated throughout the film, and not just with Scorpio, as we get a mirror of this shot, but on the other side of the law, and both create an uneasy effect. About halfway through the movie, Harry himself gets mistaken for a peeping Tom, assumedly caught snooping on an unassuming resident. I always thought it was really funny that they call him a pie hawker here.
How's he peeping, Tom? You getting an eyeful, you goddamn pie hawker? We ought to call the police. I am a police.
Which, a pie hawker is one of those guys that would stand outside strip clubs to entice customers to come in. And it's something that Harry definitely is not doing here. So I always found this quite funny.
Let him go.
Let him go.
You heard me.
Just 2 decades earlier, The Sniper also depicted a serial killer on the loose in San Francisco, killing with a rifle in an identical fashion to that of Dirty Harry's Scorpio. The skyline here, though, is vastly different. Also, fun fact, in light of the two films' similarities, both Dirty Harry and The Sniper were written by married couples. influenced by 1974's Black Christmas, 1978's Halloween, directed by John Carpenter, also lends us the eye of the killer in its tense opening scene. Though less voyeuristic in tone, it no doubt puts us again in that uncomfortable position of witnessing something we shouldn't from a first-person perspective. The 1979 Polish comedy drama Camera Buff deals directly with recording information, with our lead Philip becoming obsessed with documenting everything, so much so that he starts seeing the world through the square frame of a camera. His head literally becoming a camera lens on the poster for the movie reminded me of something I always liked about old cameras, where you would hold it up to your face and close one eye and squint through the viewfinder. By doing this, it felt as if you were almost inside the image, boxed in and bordered into your own little world, as opposed to how we take pictures today, where the screen exists within the frames of the world that it is capturing. Death seemed to be everywhere in the 1970s. In Clute we see through the same ominous eyes, a hidden force watching your every move. Back in San Francisco with Harry for Magnum Force, we again watch the world through malicious eyes. We've come to accept the term voyeurism as any form of viewing the intimate lives of others, even outside of a sexual context. But what about our other senses? What about just hearing or listening in to private conversations not meant for our ears?
He'd kill us if he got the chance.
1973's The Conversation deals directly with hearing information that could potentially reveal a murder. Whilst Brian De Palma's Blowout, its title a reference to 1966 Blow Up, sees a movie sound technician, played by young John Travolta, unwillingly fall into a deep conspiracy tied to one of his sound recordings. Now, Brian De Palma is kind of the pseudo-godfather of voyeuristic cinema. His 1972 film Sisters, which takes massive inspiration from Hitchcock, features an intrinsic element which by now you've become accustomed to, seeing something you're not meant to see. And in this case, we're seeing a murder. As we move on from the glimpses of violence peeked out from behind panes of glass in the 1970s, the 1980s would introduce more overt sexual undertones to our gaze. Conspiracy, death, and now eroticism were all colliding in a decade of desire, and Brian De Palma was at the very forefront of this, giving us a film where all of these risque elements would coalesce.
I like to watch.
Makes you hot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All right. Take off your clothes. I want to take some pictures.
Okay. What is it that we're watching?
I don't know. What are you, some kind of method actor? Huh?
It's the middle of the night, and you're walking through the dark Hollywood hills. Light gusts of fresh air blowing from the west, rolling up the knoll, through your hair, and on towards the famous Hollywood sign. You're walking along Mulholland Drive, and the chirping of cicadas and the drone of a distant highway provide an ambient backing. Across the hills you see a large, beautiful house with the upstairs lights still turned on, and inside the house you see a beautiful woman. Now, for most of us we can only imagine a scenario like this, but for down-and-out actor Jake Scully in Brian De Palma's 1984 masterpiece Body Double. This setup proves to be the inciting incident that propels him into a world of mistrust and murder. Spoilers ahead for Body Double.
I can't believe this.
Some, isn't it?
When Jake is offered residence in a friend of a friend's place, we assume it will be similar to the digs he's currently staying at, but then it's revealed that the house he will be temporarily living in is none other than the chemosphere. Designed by American architect John Lautner in 1960, the property screams space age and 1950s Americana. Maybe one day we'll all live in houses like this, Lautner probably thought. An optimistic, lost future. The chemosphere has made a ton of appearances in other films, its most notable being here in Body Double, but its own double exists in Springfield in the world of The Simpsons, where it's home of the desperate has-been Troy McClure. We'll come back to the world of Springfield and its doppelgangers in another video, so subscribe to the channel to be notified of when that video drops. The interior of the chemosphere is incredible. Jake's new place is pure 1980s indulgence, super plush, complete with a minibar, a rotating bed, and most importantly, a telescope. And it's through this telescope that Jake watches Gloria revel in her home all alone at night. Interestingly, Gloria's house is located at 1405 Miller Drive, which is roughly 4.5 miles south over Briar Summit, the hill in which the chemosphere is built into. A drive from the chemosphere to Gloria's home on Miller Drive would take over 15 minutes, down through the Laurel Canyon and onto Sunset Boulevard. So it's almost impossible that Jake could get such a direct view from the chemosphere. I've always found it fascinating how movies mix locations in these super unrealistic ways, where miles can be condensed to meters and where an hour-long journey can take just minutes. Due to its fractured nature, Los Angeles feels like the perfect city in which to do this. Its reliance on highways and cars make it feel like a city comprised of smaller cities, connected by these transient in-between parts. Much like levels in a video game, LA's got a beach level, a downtown level, a suburban level, a mountain level, a desert level, and all of these different levels are connected by enormous motorways, which kind of act like loading screens, non-places where we're not really meant to spend too much time exploring, but just transitioning from one location to the next. Maybe one day I'll do a deep dive on LA, as I feel that every video I've made comes back around to this one fascinating city. Body Double, as its name implies, is a film just about that. Doubles. Doubles in the film industry, doubles in the porn industry, and doubles in the lives that we lead. The film literally opens on a faux sunset, a double for the real thing. Whilst the opening title reveals itself to be two dual font faces. But outside of its deeper themes of duality and deception, we get so many amazing surface elements that really give this world its flavour, its latent eroticism, its Hitchcock inspirations, amazing location shooting, including a great mall scene at the Rodeo Collection in Beverly Hills, where we get to see the great Slavica Jovan, who as a kid I had a massive crush on from her appearance in Ghostbusters. De Palma's film exists in this seemingly fantastical setting where time can slow down, where during the day it is always sunny, and at night everything comes alive. In one scene, for example, Jake visits a late-night video store that not only is busy with customers in the dead of night, but also looks like the most amazing shop in the world. Halfway through the film, we get a wild scene that kind of comes out of nowhere, featuring Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and it's set in a facsimile of the coolest club in the world trope, something that we explored in a previous video. And it's in this fake club where Jake meets Holly. Now, mirrors are everywhere in Body Double, and mirrors are a window to another world inhabited by our own doubles. So it's by no mistake that Jake notices Holly through a mirror, who herself is looking into a separate mirror. She then turns to face Jake and witnesses both herself and Jake watching her, beautifully illustrating John Berger's earlier quote, "Women watch themselves being looked at." When the door swings towards her, we also catch a glimpse of the camera crew, and thus become aware of ourselves, the audience, watching this intimate encounter between Jake and Holly. The entire unreal LA setting of Body Double, and the film within a film motif, and its preoccupation with doubles, really brings to mind the 1994 film Last Action Hero, which itself had a self-reflexive mirror moment that we explored in an earlier video. But most importantly here, it's Body Double's moments of watching, its moments of voyeurism alone with Jake, that juggle the important questions surrounding desire, danger, and most importantly, power. It's safe to argue that the person doing the watching normally holds a position of power over the person being watched. The watcher can see behind closed doors, and thus gain access to information that only the watchee would know. Got a secret safe stored in the corner of your room? Well, now that safe is shared with an outsider, a voyeur. The watcher now maneuvers themselves into a position of power, and to an extent control, as being privy to certain pieces of intel could potentially be used as leverage. Catching someone cheating on their spouse, for example. But what about when the person being spied on knows that they are being watched? For example, a common spy hole, or a peephole as they are better known in the US, offers a platonic flattening of power as both parties on either side of the peephole are aware of each other's positions. The watchee knows that they are being watched, and the watcher knows that the watchee knows that they are being watched. As looking through a peephole fails to be classified as voyeurism, we can then extrapolate from that any form of voyeurism requires the watchee to be non-consenting and unaware of themselves being surveyed. So what happens then when the voyeur, the active participant, thinks that they are spying upon an unsuspecting individual, when in fact the party being watched is 100% aware of their own observation? In this scenario, the power switches, with the dominant watcher now under the control of their subject, all unbeknownst to them. In this state, the watchee could easily sneak in a red herring, something misleading to throw off the voyeur, or, if they are so inclined to do so, they could engage in exhibitionism, taking pleasure from knowing that they are being watched, and taking pleasure in becoming the dominant force of the two parties. This is the entanglement that Jake finds himself in Body Double, when it is revealed that the woman in the window was aware of her own observation the entire time. As the 80s wore on, many films featured characters participated in voyeurism, whilst receiving very little to almost no comeuppance for their infractions. Many films are also now planting us firmly in suburbia. Opportunities to watch strangers might be less than stellar out here in the burbs, but the entwined interpersonal lives of neighbours created a whole new batch of chances for surveillance. And with the advent of the camcorder and CCTV, our most deeply private moments could now be recorded, and most alarming of all, they could be shared. What's he building in there? He has subscriptions to those magazines. He never waves when he goes by. He's hiding something from the rest of us. He's all to himself, and I think I know why. He took down the tyre swing from the pepper tree. He has no children of his own, you see. He has no dog, he has no friends, and his lawn is dying. And what about those packages he sends? What's he building in there? The suburbs themselves come packaged with this feeling of latent suspicion, prompted by isolation out in the sticks, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. In the city we were on top of one another, in each other's day-to-day business, but out here in the burbs there's this sense of separation, of isolation, that can lead to feelings of paranoia. Who really is the guy who's moved in opposite? Why is he up so late? Maybe, just maybe, he's a vampire. In the suburbs, these small curiosities have both the time and space to blossom into full-blown conspiracies. 1989's The Burbs encapsulates this perfectly, which sees Tom Hanks suspecting his new neighbours of hiding something nefarious, whilst Arlington Road, Consenting Adults and Blue Velvet further delve under the idyllic surface of 20th century suburbia.
I guess you gotta get back home pretty soon, huh?
Not really, why?
Well,
You want to see the building?
yeah.
Come on, I'll show you.
It might have taken 40 years for our underlying suspicions of the post-war burbs to bubble to the surface, but the 90s also saw our fears around surveillance grow. You see, with the proliferation of the video camera by the end of the 20th century, those concealed figures hiding away behind blackened glass windows were no longer just watching. They were recording, something to be scrutinised and played back over and over again. 1993's Sliver sees William Baldwin keep a keen eye over the tenants of a building he owns, spying on them through CCTV. Both Cache and Lost Highway see rogue VHS tapes turn up on the doorstep of unsuspecting individuals, where upon watching these tapes, they both discover that they are being surveyed. The mysterious digital eye observing, recording, and examining their lives. The eye switches sides in both Disturbia and the 90s remake of Rear Window, where it's our protagonists, and thus an extension of ourselves, doing the recordings. The gaze in these two movies also switches gender, as in both films our female leads become intrigued, as opposed to repulsed, by the man's voyeuristic behaviours.
It's kind of exciting. Bet you could see some pretty sexy stuff with this thing.
I already have. After dark, this whole building goes from a PG-13 to a hard R.
Care to be more specific? Remember, God is in the details.
Well, come on over some nights, see for yourself.
Maybe I will.
Now, there's an element of male fantasy here, and this also crops up in 1999's American Beauty. A fantasy that where, upon being discovered peeping by a nerdy teenager, the woman is enticed, even flattered by the idea that someone would show such a level of interest in her. The other boys at school would never do something like this, she would think in the idealised world of these movies. The digital eye of the camera can go beyond gender and humanity as a whole, as it outlives our protagonists in the Blair Witch Project, continuing to record after all human life has ended. The agency and intent behind the lens, now lost and blind, yet we, the audience, still see. The Blair Witch Project asks that if left to go through someone else's home video footage without their consent, what will we see? And should we even be doing this?
Okay, we're out of here. I'm leaving.
There's a scene in the 2016 video game Firewatch where Delilah, a fellow fire lookout who has been watching you from afar the entire game, says,
"Oh, well, you're back in your tower. Maybe you need a drink too."
I'm not in my tower.
I am looking at a man standing in your lookout, and it's not you.
It is not me.
Oh my God, go.
I'm going.
Now, not only have you been watched by the unseen Delilah throughout the game, but both yourself and her are worried that someone else is surveying you. Silent Hill 4 features moments of secretly watching others, 100% controlled by the player, as you leer through a hole in the wall to the apartment next door. Here in a video game, we're no longer passive viewers, but active players with full agency. We can stay here watching for as long as we like, anticipating that the developers will give us a payoff, a return on our investment. The question of consent or overstepping the mark is something that lingers regarding any conversation around the act of watching others. As mentioned earlier, because voyeurism is heavily based upon power dynamics, the watcher instinctively knows that what they are doing is wrong. It's wrong because of this power imbalance, and upon realization, the watcher must act accordingly, maybe shifting their sights somewhere else. Films, on the other hand, allow us to not act accordingly. They allow us to peer deeper and embrace that feeling deep inside our conscience that says, look away. Here in these private, intimate moments, power is wrapped up with intent, routinely overstepping the mark, as we have seen in so many of these examples. But where is this mark? Looking back at the male fantasy highlighted in Disturbia and American Beauty, the idea that watching with intent will make the person like you more, in a kind of no one looks at her the way I do type of way. This scenario can be over-romanticized and oversimplified, as when you look with intent, this is the moment that innocently watching can turn into intentional voyeurism. You see, intent is the mark, and this mark becomes progressively blurrier in the age of social media, where we can all quite easily be voyeurs. The power of these moving images is incredible, simultaneously alluring and dangerous. But being able to gaze upon these images, unbeknownst to the people they are depicting, really transforms our experience into something else. Something that is hard to put into words. You see, voyeurism is at once both intimate and seductive, whilst also being invasive, unethical, and at times even illegal. So there's this inherent contradiction there, this ethical tension, an unsteady balance that we feel whilst watching. A longing to look, but the knowledge that we shouldn't. A quiet unease that we recognise within ourselves. And it's within cinema that we are warranted the time and space to inhabit this unease, to explore this contradiction safely. Cinema's power isn't just in what it shows, but it is in how it shows it and how it makes us aware of ourselves as watchers. Whilst a good film allows us to become totally absorbed, totally lost in its celluloid vision, a great film goes a step further and asks of us to examine ourselves, our behaviours and our rituals. They offer us a profound level of introspection.
It was beautiful.
Like a kid innocently watching a movie through a neighbour's window, we watch because we desire to know more and go deeper into the image. That anticipation of seeing something we're not meant to see. Watching you, watching me, watching the screen. Thank you for reaching the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. There's a lot more similar videos like this on my channel, so feel free to check them out. Alternatively, you can support me over on Patreon. The link to that is in the description below, along with all of the references and citations. Like I've mentioned previously, this isn't so much film analysis, but more about how films feel, how they resonate with us on a more emotional level. And with that said, thank you for watching. I will see you all real soon.